A certain American politician just likened himself right now to Nelson Mandela. And he basically said to a judge that he's going to be happy to violate the gag order and go to jail because then he'll be a hero like my hero, Nelson Mandela. But let me tell you about Nelson Mandela. Yes, he's a controversial figure, and he was a very controversial figure in many, many ways in Africa. And depending on who you are and what perspective, if you are part of the Ronald Reagan thought process of anti-communism or Margaret Thatcher's global capitalist, then yes, to them, Nelson Mandela was a terrorist. But if you were someone who was about freedom and about the choice and about voting and about human rights, he was a freedom fighter. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years on Robben Island, or rather in prison, because of his political beliefs. Nelson Mandela did not cause an insurrection so he could stay in power. He was someone who believed in the rule of law. Yes, he was a fighter, but he became a fighter after the 1960 uprising because he was a pacifist. But when the 1960 uprising took place and many South Africans were killed, he felt that he had to resort to a different tactic. I don't agree with the tactic, but it was his convictions about bringing South Africans together, about unifying people, about making a difference. Now, one of the controversies around Mandela was he embraced the Libyan leader, Gaddafi, and he had a very good relationship with Fidel Castro in Cuba. But he had those relationships because one, Gaddafi was a African negotiator, and everybody interacted in Africa with each other, trying to find a way to address the issues in Africa. They became friends, they found respect. I don't necessarily agree with that relationship. With Castro, when South Africa emerged in the post-apartheid period, we did not have teachers, we did not have doctors, because so many of our intellectuals were pulled away. So many of our doctors ended up being doctors in the United States. And yes, first world countries siphon off professionals from third world countries because that is part of how they support their first world interests. So we lost a lot of doctors in South Africa to the United States and other countries. We also lost a lot of teachers because our teachers were activists. Our teachers were deep thinkers. Our teachers wanted to lift our community up. And under apartheid, people like my mother, people like Dick Dudley, G.L. Abrams, and so many other activists were either banned or imprisoned or could not do the job to lift up our community. But Castro supported Mandela. When South Africa needed doctors, Castro sent thousands of Cuban doctors to help address the medical issues, to help fix education. Yes, the country still has a long ways to go. Yes, there are still many issues. But Mandela would never have cozied up to the likes of Kim Jong-un of North Korea or embraced Vladimir Putin, even though the ANC was aligned with communism during the apartheid struggle. There's no way Mandela would wrap his arms and trust Putin. He would trust American intelligence before he would trust Putin's word. Mandela would not advocate for the division of people. He would not find ways to try and say suppress the vote. He may not have been a person who would agree with the abortion stand, but he would have not stood in the way of a woman's right to choose for her body. And he would not have banned books. Also, Mandela, I believe fundamentally was a really honest man who may have been surrounded by some people who were not so honest, who may have been scrupulous. But there's no way Mandela would hold classified documents so he could later sell it, so he could enrich himself. And I always found him to be a man of dignity, a man who would speak to the people, not just of South Africa, but of the world, in a dignified way, not sort of in a way that was bombastic or criticism or those immigrants. And South Africa has an immigration problem. We have a lot of sub-Saharan Africans who have come to South Africa for opportunities. We did not close our borders. We did not build a big fence to keep people out. We understand why these migrations are taking place. We may not like what is taking place, but we work towards a solution and we understand the implications that other countries will be facing, and not by isolating, not by demonizing. So I feel there are some very strong lessons that we can learn about global politics by learning about the dignity of this man, Nelson Mandela, and the values and the stand that he represented in South Africa. Let's open our minds to the world of possibility and let's do what we can do to encourage people to come together to work towards solutions. Let us truly become not a rainbow nation, but become a rainbow planet where we recognize all the diversity of human beings on this place we call Mother Earth.